2010, a group of researchers went to a very poor region in India to investigate the behavior of farmers over the years. Now, these farmers were very, very poor, so much so that the amount of money they had available to them varied a lot across the year. Specifically, just before harvest, they had used up most of their money from the previous crops, and now they were struggling to meet the essential things that they needed to consume. While right after harvest, they had just sold their crops, and now they were much more relaxed financially and not financially constrained. So these researchers, they measured these farmers' cognitive abilities just before and just after harvest, and what they found was very surprising. They found that the same farmers had much lower cognitive scores when they were under scarcity than when they were richer. This was very puzzling to me, and that's when I discovered the theory of the scarcity mindset. The idea is that when you don't have enough money to live and you cannot buy the essential things you need, it creates a lot of worries, and that occupies the mental space, leaving less cognitive resources for other important tasks and decisions. And this could even affect the way they make very important financial choices and their productivity at work, right? And that got me wondering if it could be an alternative explanation for the persistence of poverty. If the poor have less cognitive resources because they're constantly under scarcity with their cognitive resources occupied, could it be that this is leading them to make worse decisions and actually performing worse at work, thus keeping them in this vicious cycle of poverty? This motivated me to develop a mathematical model where I explain how perceived scarcity can affect decision-making and productivity. I take the predictions of this model and I test them in the lab experiment. Now, the most intuitive way to test this would be to take a group of people and randomly assign them into two groups. To one group, I give a lot more money for them to make consumption choices, and to the other one, a lot less money, the scarce group, and then I compare their outcomes, right? But are the two groups comparable, though? And the answer, unfortunately, is no. By having different amounts of resources, this directly affects the way they make decisions. For instance, a richer person might put less effort into a task, a manual labor task, than a poorer person. And so I had to find a way to make these two groups comparable. And the solution I found was to induce perceived scarcity. So I'm going to give the two groups the same amount of resources, but I'm going to manipulate the way they perceive their resources. Sounds like magic, but I'll show you how it's done. So the subjects enter the lab and they perform two tasks. A shopping task where with the money I give them, they make consumption choices, and a production task where they can earn real money. So this simulates a very realistic scenario. They perform these two tasks multiple times, and for one group, I give a lot more money in the first two periods, so they get used to being able to consume a lot more, while the other group I give less. And in the third period, I give them the exact same amount of money. And as you can see, the group on the right, they're used to having a lot more, and suddenly they cannot afford what they could afford before, thus triggering the scarcity mindset. And now I have a reliable setting to compare the quality of decisions and productivity in a setting where these two groups are comparable, and I can say how scarcity can actually affect decision-making and productivity. Now, why should we care about these psychological theories? Well, I believe that being aware of the psychological effects of scarcity can be very important to develop more effective policies to alleviate poverty and finish it. Thank you.